Now let me just break it to you, the fools out there. If you don't make stuff, there's no stuff. Yeah.
Now, when you say civilization's fragile, do you mean because of this COVID-19 that's going on right now?
What's that? Never heard of it.
It's this thing.
Yeah, no.
It's like some people just get a cough.
No idea what you're talking about.
Other people, it gets much worse.
I mean, this certainly has taken over the mind space of the world to a degree that is quite shocking.
Yeah. Well, out of nowhere. That's what's crazy. It's like you go back to November, nothing. Now here we are, December, January, February, March, April, May, 6 months. Totally different world.
I kind of saw this whole thing play out in China before it played out in the U.S. So it's kind of like watching the same movie again, but in English. I think the mortality rate is much less than what say the World Health Organization said it was. It's very much less. It's like probably at least order of magnitude less.
Well, it seems to be very deadly to very specific kinds of people and people with specific problems.
Yeah, I mean, if you can look at the mortality statistics, by age and whether they have comorbidities, like do they have like basically existing conditions, and by age, if you're below 60 and have no serious health issues, the probability of death is extremely low. It's not zero, but it's extremely low.
They didn't think that this was the case, though, when they first started to lock down the country. Do you think that it's a situation where once they've proceeded in a certain way, it's very difficult to correct course?
It's almost like people really wanted a panic. It's quite crazy. Most of the hospitals in the United States right now are half empty. In some cases, they're at 30% capacity.
And is this because they've decided to forego elective procedures and normal things that people would have to go to the hospital for?
Yes, I mean, and we're not talking about just some of these elective procedures are quite important.
Yes.
Like it's like you have a bad heart,
gallbladder disease. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and you need a triple bypass. It's like sort of elective, but if you don't get it done in time, you're going to die.
Yeah. Elective's a weird word.
Yeah, elective. It's not like, hey, I want to. It's not like plastic surgery or something. It's more like my hip is. I'm in extreme pain because my hip's blown out, or my knee, and I don't want to go to the hospital. I can't go to the hospital to people in extreme pain, people that need a kidney, like people that have like quite serious issues that are choosing not to go out of fear. So I think it's a problem. It's not good.
It seems like the state of public perception is shifting.
It is.
Like people are taking some deep breaths and relaxing, and because of the statistics and essentially across the board, it's being recognized that it's not as fatal as we thought it was. Still dangerous, still worse than the flu, but not as bad as we thought or we feared it could be.
I mean, objectively, the mortality is much lower. Like at least a factor of 10, maybe a factor of 50 lower than initially thought.
There's two arguments, right? The one argument is we need to keep going, protect the weak, protect the sick, but let's open up the economy. The other argument is stop placing money over human lives and let's shelter in place until we come up with some sort of a decision, and let's figure out some way to develop some sort of a universal basic income plan or something like that to feed people during this time when we make this transition.
I think there's as I said, my opinion is if somebody wants to stay home, they should stay home. And if somebody doesn't want to stay home, they should not be compelled to stay home. That's my opinion. Do you think if somebody doesn't like that, well, that's my opinion. This notion though that you can just sort of send checks out to everybody and things will be fine is not true. Obviously, there's some people have this absurd view that the economy is like some magic horn of plenty, like it just makes stuff. stuff, whatever. It just there's a magic quota plenty, and the goods and services, they just come from this magic quota plenty. And then if somebody has more stuff than somebody else, it's because they took more from this magic quota plenty. Now let me just break it to the fools out there. If you don't make stuff, there's no stuff. Yeah. So if you don't make the food, if you don't process the food, you don't transport the food, and whether medical treatment, getting your teeth fixed, there's no stuff. I would become detached from reality. You can't just legislate money and solve these things. If you don't make stuff, there is no stuff. Obviously, we'll run out of the stores. We'll run out of the the machine just grinds to a halt.
What's the way out of this? What do you think is, like, if you had the president's ear, or if people wanted to just listen to you openly, what do you think is the way out of this?
Let's clear up the data. So, like I said, just make sure we record it as COVID only if it is somebody has been tested, has received a positive COVID test, not if they simply have symptoms, one of like 100 symptoms. And then if it is a COVID death, it must be separated. Was COVID a primary reason for death, or did they also have stage 3 cancer, heart disease, emphysema, and got hit by a bus and had COVID?
Yeah, I've read all this stuff about them diagnosing people as a COVID death despite other variables.
This is not a question. This is what is occurring.
And where are you reading this from? Where are you getting this from?
The public health officials have literally said this. This is not a question mark.
Right. But this is unprecedented, right? Like if someone had the flu but also had a heart attack, they would assume that person died of a heart attack.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is unprecedented. Is this because this is such a popular, I don't want to use that word the wrong way, but that's what I mean, a popular subject? And financial incentives.
Yes, and like I said, this is not some sort of a moral indictment of sort of hospital administrators. It's just they're in a tough spot here. They actually don't have enough patients to pay everyone without furloughing doctors and firing staff, and they're potentially going bankrupt. So then they're like, okay, well, the stimulus bill says if we get all this money, if we say if it's a COVID death, I'm like, okay, they coughed before they died. In fact, they're not even diagnosed as COVID. They simply, if you had weakness, a cough, shortness of breath. Like, frankly, I'm not sure how you die without those things.
Yeah. Right. There's so many different things that you could attribute to COVID too. There's so many symptoms. There's diarrhea, headaches, dehydration, cough.
Yeah. Yes, but to be clear, you don't even need to have gotten a COVID diagnosis. Right. You simply need to have had one of many symptoms and then have died for some reason, and it's COVID. So then it makes the death count look very high. And then we're then stuck in a bind because it looks like the death count's super high and not going down like it should be. And now, so then we should keep whatever, keep the shelter in place stuff there and keep people in their home, confine people to their homes. So we need to break out of this. We're stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
And I think the way to break out of this loop is to have clarity of information.
First of all, we need real data. We need
just parse out the data. Don't lump it all together.
Yeah.
And then if you give people, just parse out the data better, clearer information about like I said, was this an actual COVID diagnosis, or was it or did they get the test and the test came back positive, or do they just have some symptoms? Just parse those two out, and then parse out just if somebody died, did they die? Did they even have a COVID test, or did they just have one of many symptoms? Like Like, how do you die without weakness? I don't know.
Right.
It's
Of course.
impossible, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're going to die, you're going to have shortness of breath, weakness, and maybe
Yeah.
you might cough a little.
So was it quantified? What was it?
Yeah, did that person die? Did they actually have a COVID test? And the test come back positive? And then if they died, did they die where COVID was? It doesn't have to be the main cause, but it was a significant contributor to their death, or was it not a significant contributor to the death?
Right. It's not as simple as just because you had COVID, COVID killed you.
It's definitely not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, people die all the time, and they have like flu and
Yes.
other colds, and well, we don't say that they died of those flu and other colds.